Hello, Stitchers. Welcome to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. I'm your host, Lisa Woolfork. I'm a fourth-generation sewing enthusiast with more than 20 years of sewing experience. I am looking forward to today's conversation, so sit back, relax, and get ready to get your stitch together. Hey friends, hey, it's Lisa from Black Women Stitch and the Stitch Please podcast. And as I say every week, this is a very special episode because this episode I am talking with you about presser feet. Presser feet. I'm still working on the title, presser, pressure, but these are the little tiny engineering marvels that make sewing so amazing and make it that much easier to do the things that we like to do. They're called presser feet because they do kind of press down on the fabric. So there are a variety of presser feet. There are about 10 feet, between 6 and 10 feet that come with a sewing machine standard. And there are dozens upon dozens. I even did something like, what are the top 20 presser feet? I'm not going to take you through the top 20 presser feet. Yes, I do have them all. I was like, wait, I really don't have this many. And it was like, ooh, girl, yes, you do. You really do. Because I use them. I do. I really do use them. I'm going to take you through some of the intro basic snap-on presser feet. We are talking about snap-on feet, which are going to be different than the presser feet that you need to attach with a screw, ones that attach to the shank of the machine. That's a different type of foot. We are specializing today in the snap-on foot that has a bar that goes along the middle part of the foot. And all you need to do is lower the shank of your machine. And it has this little adapter that it just latches on. The pressure just will help the bar. This is the bar and this is the shank of the foot. It'll go and it just kind of locks down in there. Very easy to change. You can release it by pressing the back of the shank and the foot will release and pop off. What presser feet allow you to do is to give you convenience and versatility in your sewing. There's also ways that presser feet make certain stitching tasks possible that would not be possible without that particular foot. So think about your presser feet as little tiny equipping devices to help you sew better and to have more fun while you are sewing. I want to begin with the standard foot. This is a standard foot that might have an open toe look. It's called a standard or a zigzag foot. It's one of the most used presser feet that you will have in your collection. I'm showing you mine right now. The way that my machine devises these is they call it an in foot. This is a little bit wider. You can also see that the toe is open. This is an important distinction that some of these have toes that are open, where there's a space in between, a wide space in between the two legs of the foot. It's also clear right here in the middle, which I like because I like to be able to see what the fabric is doing. It also has this little tiny channel here in the middle. And what that channel does is, again, allow you to kind of see the elements that you're going to be stitching. But you also want to be careful to not have too much tight stitches in the top there because it's easy for your zigzag to kind of be pulled in if you have it that way. But this is an open toe foot, could be called a clear foot. And this style is great for general sewing, I believe. It is good for zigzags. It's good for straight stitch. It's good for decorative stitching. The width of this foot really accentuate some of the decorative stitching that you can do. So this is an open toe foot that is one of the things that came with my machine. The thing you want to think about presser feet is that they are designed to operate with the machine in such a way that enhances any of the things you're going to be sewing. So there is a relationship between the stitch selection and the sewing machine presser foot that you are using. These have to go together. Otherwise, it's going to give you the blues. For example, this foot I'm going to show you next is a zipper foot. This is a narrow zipper foot. I really like this foot because it has these narrow sections. It's a very lean foot. And then it has cutouts on either side, which is a perfect groove for your needle to go into. So this is meant to be about the width of zipper tape. And as the width of the zipper tape, this little part can just ride down that tape and not be in the way and allow the stitches here to let the needle get really close to the stitching line. You don't want to get it too close because ask me how I know. If you get the stitching too close and you happen to sew too close to the teeth and you happen to hit the tooth or something like that, it's not going to zip properly. But this does help you get that kind of control. I know some folks use this for invisible zippers, but I prefer an invisible zipper foot. And I will show you that also in a second. This is one of the tips I also suggest. If you are working with your feet and you have to change your foot out, you take one foot off the machine and you put it down, and then you put the new foot on. Be kind to yourself and put that foot that you normally use somewhere you will remember it. Put it somewhere where you know you're going to find it again. Because I can tell you, I have taken out all these feet so that I can show you, and I feel pretty certain that one of them is going to end up under the table, in the chair, in the couch, in a totally different room. Sometimes these presser feet act like my bonnet. I put my bonnet on at night, and then in the morning, I don't know where it is because it's seeing other people. Sometimes these presser feet can do that too. So don't make your life sad. Put them back exactly where they need to go. Speaking of that, let me go get my box so I can show you where I put my feet, the ones that are extra, because that's where I think that invisible zipper foot is. Here's my box. See, I made this myself. I made this box myself. I made it myself using my Cricut. There's lots of different types of invisible zipper feet. The one I just showed you is the one that looks kind of like a ski. It has the notches on both sides that get close to where the needle is. This one looks very different, and it has a little tiny groove at the top. Both of these are snap-on feet. You can just snap them onto your sewing machine shank. If you have that low shank adapter, which most machines have, a lot of the domestic machines have, so that you can snap your machine feet off and on. This one is different because, as you can tell, if you're on the Patreon, look at this little guy. It's so adorable. But then when you turn it over on the back, you can see these grooves underneath. And that groove is where your invisible zipper teeth will glide underneath. The tip for invisible zippers and attaching them with this foot is to press the coils flat. When you zip them, the coils will curl back into their original position. But if you press them flat, they will ride really well under these grooves. And that makes all the difference in my mind of attaching an invisible zipper. Another really exciting foot that I think is a lot of fun, both relate to buttons. So I've talked about the open toe zigzag foot, the straight stitch foot. This is also good for decorative stitching. I talked about two zipper feet, one that you can use for installing your standard zippers, and another you can use for installing invisible zippers. Now let's talk about how we can use these presser feet to install buttons. The first thing you'll need to do is a buttonhole. I think that there are folks who really struggle with buttonholes because their machine is letting them down. That's just what I think. I think that there are folks who truly hate doing buttonholes because their buttonhole foot that they have is unreliable. Similarly, there's folks out there who hate needle threaders because their needle threader has been unreliable. But let me tell you, friend, once you get a buttonhole foot that works well with your machine and is consistent and hits that same button as it should every single time, you will feel better about it. I'm going to show you my buttonhole foot and how it works, just as a description, and then show you another foot that can help you with your buttons. So this is my buttonhole foot. Many buttonhole feet will look like this. It looks a little intimidating when you compare it to, let's say, a snap-on presser foot, kind of like this in foot right here. It's almost 4 times the size. Like, wow, this feels a little bit overwhelming. But it's designed to help you get the best possible results and work with multiple size buttons. So for this machine and for many automatic buttonhole feet, you will find this little tiny lever here, and you are meant to pull down the appropriate buttonhole stitching lever on the sewing machine. So that's one of the first things that I do when I am using this buttonhole foot. You can see there is a red line here. Remember, when you are working with presser feet, that red line is meant to be your center point. That is where your needle will line up if you have it lined up in the center, and it will help you to know if your stitches and everything are straight. You have to also make sure you put your needle in the middle needle position. These are all of the tips and tricks that you can find if you look at your manual, but I'm just going to tell you a bit about how it works for me. This part here, I'm going to show you, it's like my favorite part of this foot, because look, this little lever, the one that attaches when you pull down the buttonhole stitching guide in your sewing machine, you use this to say what size button you're going to put in. Hey friends, hey, I know you're enjoying the audio version of Stitch Please, and thanks so much for listening. But you're missing out on all the great stuff going on behind the scenes. That's why I'm inviting you to join our Black Women Stitch Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, you can see all the video versions of the podcast. Plus, you get some amazing swatch cards. You know how much I love these swatch cards. Look, see how cool these are? Oh wait, you can't see them because you are not yet on the Patreon. So when you join the Patreon, you'll be able to see this, me showing you these amazing cards. We also have some great perks at the other tiers, like discounts, swag, office hours, and more. Don't be the last sewist in the group now. Head over to patreon.com/blackwomenstitch or click the link in the show notes and become a Patreon supporter today. We truly cannot do this without you. So thank you so much. So what I do is I open this up, and it can do a button maybe up to 1 inch wide. You put your button in here, and then you close it down to however big your button is. So say your button is like that. I will then take this foot and snap it using this little needle, this little presser foot bar, snap it right to the presser foot guide, and it will automatically stitch a buttonhole that is this length and the appropriate width. It also has about maybe 25 different buttonhole styles that you can use on this machine. But almost all of the machines that I know about come with a buttonhole foot. How well it works is something I don't know. But I can say for this machine, for my machine, it works incredibly well. And it makes me frustrated because I talk to people and they're like, oh, my buttonhole foot is raggedy, or I hate it so much, or I don't want to ever do buttons, so I do zippers, or I do snaps, or I don't sew any garments that include buttons because I hate them so much. You deserve better. That's just what I say. We all deserve better. We all deserve better. So I just want you to think about this. If you are looking for a sewing machine, and if you are able to go to a dealer, sit down at that machine and do 10 buttonholes. They should absolutely allow that. They should allow whatever you need to buy the machine because you are making an investment. But I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, all this stuff is beyond me or I can't do it. Of course you can do it. You just need to have the right equipment. And I get frustrated when people or when companies are offering low quality equipment that just makes people frustrated. But this works incredibly well. You'll see it has this big eye here, or what feels like a stitch path, because it'll stitch up and down. It'll stitch vertically as well as horizontally. It does that buttonhole bar at the end, or the bar tack at the end to close it off. It's a really great little foot. Well, it's one of the biggest feet I have. But again, I'm only talking about snap-on presser feet today, and I am not going to get to all 50 of them that exist or even the top 20 that I like and use because apparently y'all don't like 2-hour episodes. So we're going to start wrapping this up pretty soon, but I'm going to show you some of the ones that are my absolute favorite. And then I'm also going to take a quick pause and share with the Patreon some of my like super duper favorites. This is one of my big favorites right here. This is called an M foot on this machine. I don't know if all the letters, I'm pretty sure each machine company does their codes their feet specifically for their machine. Shout out, I'm not a Bernina sewing machine user, but we have to credit Bernina with inventing or bringing together one of the first interchangeable snap-on feet collections in 1956. That's something that I think that they are well known for, which is interesting because the Olfa company invented the snap-off blade right around the same time, which led to the invention of the rotary cutter. So hashtag sewing history is interesting. This foot is great. This is a button foot. This is a foot that you can use to stitch your buttons on your garments. I have not hand sewn a button in forever. Now, if it's a shank button, yes, no one's putting a shank button on a sewing machine. No one's going to be foolish on purpose. But these things, though, to put, as long as your button has two eyes, two holes in it on the button itself that are evenly spaced, your zigzag machine will do this. This foot has, you'll watch, it has a way to create deeper thread shanks. So we put it down this way, and you can tell there's a little tiny, like right there, watch, is a little tiny guide there. And then when I do this, it goes away. See? It goes here, it goes there, here, there. This is if you want to just put the button right on top and it'll do a tighter thread shank to stitch it to the garment. And then if you want it to be a little bit looser, you can slide this guide up and it'll go over that space. And that I think is very, very cool. And that is the button foot. Yes, you can attach buttons right with your sewing machine. So far we've gone over the button attachment foot. We've gone over the buttonhole maker foot, the automatic button foot, which is wonderful because you can just open it up and put your button in there. We've gone over the narrow zipper foot. I like to call it, looks like a ski, but it allows you to sew your standard zippers on because the width of this foot corresponds to the width of the zipper tape. We've talked about the invisible zipper foot that I really like because it has the grooves here. And we talked about the open toe wide foot. This is a decorative stitch foot, but also a really good traditional regular sewing foot because you can use it to see through it very, very clearly. And that's something I think is really nice. It's also, I really do appreciate the clarity of that foot because I can kind of look down and see as I'm going. I'm going to wrap up this episode with one last foot. Let me see. What would be a good foot to talk about? Oh, here is a good, fun foot that the quilters all love. And I don't think that I should not be remiss and think about what the favorite feet are for our quilting friends. And that foot is the 1/4 inch foot. There are quite a few 1/4 inch feet out there available in the world. I'm going to show you the one that I enjoy using because one of the things you'll realize if you are a quilter, especially if you have ever done quilt swap, where everyone's supposed to be making the same block with the same instructions and the same seam allowance, which has been a 1/4 inch for quilt making since whenever, that's when you find out that everybody's 1/4 inch seam is just a little bit different. Some people like it to be scant. Some people just don't pay attention and their 1/4 inch seam is actually not a 1/4 inch. And that becomes a big deal when you are quilting a group project, for example. Hence me not quilting group projects. But look, so this 1/4 inch foot is really helpful because it has, you see this guide right here so that you can make sure that your fabric is not running under or over that guide. That is one way that the 1/4-inch foot with a guide can help people to make sure that they are sewing that perfect 1/4-inch seam, which is really crucial, as I said, for quilting. So the 1/4-inch foot is another really important foot. If you want to do any type of quilt projects, basic patchwork, any of those other types of really elaborate designs, they all use a 1/4-inch seam allowance to put them together. And you will have best results if you are using the 1/4-inch foot. So that's what we have today, y'all. The Stitch Please podcast is always happy to talk with y'all about anything and everything related to sewing. But one of the things I'd love to share is some of these just basic tips just to help people get started and to learn more about the equipment they already have. There's so much that already comes in your sewing machine box. When you buy the sewing machine, these feet are already in there. That wide foot is in there. The buttonhole foot is in there. The zipper foot is in there. All of these things are things that you can use to your ease and benefit to make your sewing life easier. So give these a try. Practice. If you don't have these things and you want to try to get a machine that does have it, that's the great thing about the presser feet. You can take these feet and they are interchangeable machine to machine if the machines are low shank snap-on machines. You don't have to buy a new machine to do a new thing. This is one of the benefits of domestic machines, that they have this interchangeability. We'll talk in the future about industrial machines and semi-industrial machines and how the feet for them are very different. They attach through the shank differently with a screw rather than with a snap-on. So there's all these different methods. But for now, trust yourself. Open up that box that came with your sewing machine, take out all the feet, look at them, see what you think they do. There are tons of resources, including this podcast and including me. If you ever have a question, and this is one of the great reasons to subscribe to the Stitch Please podcast, as well as the Black Women Stitch Patreon, because on the Patreon, there are ways that you can reach out to me. You can send me messages at $15 a level, at the $15 level or higher. You can send me direct private video messaging and just say, hey, Lisa, what is this? I'm like, oh yeah, well, that's going to be that's your edge stitch foot, or that's your roller hem foot, your blind hem foot. All of these things also come in your machine kit. So in the interest of time and of breaking up certain amazing ideas, I have talked to you about just a few of them, but hopefully it's giving you a little bit more confidence and eagerness to try these things. Remember, the right presser foot can transform your sewing. It can help you get your stitch together in the most amazing ways. I am a big fan of presser feet. I think they are little engineering marvels, and you have them at your disposal already. So take them out, get some needles, get some scrap fabric of different types and textures, and just practice. And in time, you will learn what works best for you. So thank you so much for joining us today for the Stitch Please podcast. We thank you always for your time and attention, and come back next time and we'll help you get your stitch together. Bye.
You've been listening to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. We appreciate you joining us this week and every week for stories that center Black women, girls, and femmes in sewing. We invite you to join the Black Women Stitch Patreon community with giving levels beginning at $5 a month. Your contributions help us bring the Stitch Please podcast to you every week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support, and come back next week and we'll help you get your stitch together.